All right. Welcome, everyone, to our Climate Action Advisory Committee meeting. Delighted to see all of your smiling faces here this morning, and I will call our meeting to order and would like to start with introductions. And we have a new member of the SCTA RCPA team here with us today, Ross Clendenin, and he is our new marketing and communications specialist, and he will also be taking on the role as our staff lead for the Climate Action Advisory Committee. So you'll be seeing a lot more of Ross as we go forward. And I am going to turn facilitation of today's meeting over to Ross and invite him to maybe say a few words about your background, and then we can take it away. So Ross, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tanya, and nice to meet everyone virtually. Looking forward to helping out with the committee going forward. So I've been with RCPA and SCTA for a little over a month now, learning the ropes. My background, I'm a lifelong Sonoma County resident, just kind of moved from the private sector, most recently working in desalination for disaster relief and distributed infrastructure. And my priorities as of late have been working on a website rebuild for the both groups here. Also funding for climate change project with the ad hoc committee, and the annual reporting for both RCPA and SCTA. So that's what I've been in the midst of and still am. So to begin today, we will need to vote to continue to hold this meeting via Zoom. So we will have a vote there. So based on the California governor's March 4th declaration of a state of emergency due to COVID-19, which is still in effect, and the Sonoma County Public Health Officer's September 22nd recommendation to continue teleconferencing, the Climate Action Advisory Committee finds that the conditions continue to exist pursuant to Government Code Section 54953 to allow it to use teleconferencing to hold public meetings in accordance with Government Code, to ensure members of the public have continued access to safely observe and participate in local government. And definitely it seems like those conditions do consist. Drew, can we facilitate a vote on continuing via Zoom for this committee?
Certainly. May I ask from the committee for a motion and a second, please?
I move.
I'll second.
Excellent. Continuing along.
Wait 1 second.
Sorry.
I'm going to do a roll call vote from all
gotcha.
members on this. We'll start with Jane Elias.
Aye.
Carl Mears is absent. Judith Newton.
Aye.
Tyra Benoit.
Aye.
Marilyn Joyce. I don't see. Beverly Shore.
Yes.
Pete Gang.
Yes.
Julie Roys.
Yes.
Shirley Johnson.
Yes.
Kevin Conway.
Yes.
Steve Bertelbaugh.
Aye.
Zeno Slitkick, who I don't see. Matt Metzler, who I also don't see. David Leland.
Yes.
Michelle Gervais is absent. Christopher Peck.
Yes.
Tom Conlon.
Yes.
Jake McKenzie's absent. Julie Kawahara, let us know she will not be here today. And then Carrie Fugit.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
Excellent. So next on the list, do we have any public comment, Drew?
I did not receive any pre-submitted public comments.
Okay. Excellent. In that case, we will move on to the minutes from the last meeting back on October 8th of last year. Does anyone have any corrections to those minutes? No, I don't see any hands. All right, in that case, does anyone move to approve those?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drew, for good minutes.
So the next topic is the Vision Zero draft action plan. Tanya is going to speak on that. And I believe we have Quinn from Tool Design is going to present regarding that plan. And that will be, and then we'll follow with some questions, comments, and that will be, of course, open to public comment as well.
All right.
Tanya, are you ready to?
Yes, thank you, Ross. So I'll just make a few remarks before turning it over to Quinn. As hopefully all of you recall, we have in our Sonoma Climate Mobilization strategy, one of our key strategies is called Drive Less Sonoma County. And a key piece of that is making our roads and infrastructure safer for biking, walking, taking transit, et cetera, so that we can shift from driving our cars to other modes of transportation. And so one of the objectives in the strategy is to implement the Vision Zero action plan. And so there's been a great team of folks from the Department of Health Services and SCTA working with an advisory committee on developing an action plan. And we've been working with Tool Design on that plan. And so Quinn is here with us today from Tool Design, and looks like Sophia as well, to present the draft to you and to take any comments or questions that you might have. And there will be a series of other advisory committee meetings, as well as a public workshop on January 25th to continue sharing the draft and getting public input. And we'll certainly share the link to that public workshop if you'd like to attend that as well. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Quinn.
Great, thank you so much, Tanya, and yeah, thanks for inviting us here today, and thank you all for taking the time to be here, and thanks for your attention. Yeah, as Tanya mentioned, Sophia is a new planner who just recently started at Tool, and she's here today to note down all of your great thoughts and comments. So that being said, I hope there's some great thoughts and comments. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up this presentation. Oh, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, everyone's seeing that all right?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, as Tanya mentioned, you know, there's a pretty clear link between Vision Zero and you know, climate action. The common thread is, yeah, trying to make roads safer for people who are walking and biking and using public transportation, as well as people are driving. But you know, there's a lot of overlap between the two goals. So, but yeah, I'll just give a brief introduction on Vision Zero. This is, you know, how our plan document starts out. I'm not sure if any of you have read it yet, which is totally fine either way, but I'll just be sort of running through the sort of broad story arc of the document. So we really start out by making the case for Vision Zero using a combination of quantitative and qualitative data to sort of get at why traffic fatalities and injuries are a serious but preventable public health issue. So this map, as an example, it shows the location of every fatal crash from 2020 categorized by travel mode. So it tells both a sort of quantitative story as well as a collection of more personally salient stories about individuals who lost their lives in the county. We also want to explain how Vision Zero complements related efforts around mobility justice, you know, environmental justice, economic development, and greenhouse gas reduction. So after that, the next section of the plan goes into, you know, what is the Vision Zero approach? And I think the key takeaways from this are, you know, Vision Zero is basically an acknowledgement that severe and fatal crashes are not something we should accept as inevitable. Nor do they affect all communities equally. So, you know, human drivers are imperfect and we have to plan for that. Vision Zero really focuses on fatal and severe crashes, the ones that, you know, tear apart people's lives rather than property damage only crashes. And finally, you know, Vision Zero is a collective, it's about collective responsibility through a safe systems approach. The next section of the plan gets into crash trends and factors. So these 4 factors you see here are the top contributors to crashes in Sonoma County, whether we look at all crashes or the subset of fatal and severe injury crashes. We use a really broad range of different crash data to get into identifying appropriate countermeasures, whether that's traffic calming, signal modifications, or drunk driving prevention programs. And again, we're taking a public health approach. As Tanya said, it's a partnership between SCTA and the Department of Health Services. And of course, we're also backed by the Vision Zero Advisory Committee, which includes, representatives from all sorts of local jurisdictions and agencies. But yeah, we're trying to get to the root causes of traffic fatalities and severe injuries rather than just treating the symptoms. This map shows the high injury network in Sonoma County. So that's both high injury corridors and high injury intersections. And these were identified through a systematic process, examining the location, frequency, severity, and mode of crashes along the county's road network. When I say the county, obviously I'm referring not just to county roads, but also all of the local jurisdictions within the county. And the point of the high injury network is to identify areas where safety investments should be prioritized and help to guide investments in safer streets. The plan also has a big section on sort of the equity implications of Vision Zero. So this section looks at a lot of different issues, including inequitable access to transportation and housing that result in disparities across in crash victims across race, socioeconomic status, travel mode, and geography. We use the MTC equity priority community geographies as well as CalEnviroScreen to show the correlation between Sonoma County's most dangerous roadways and its most underserved communities. And finally, we get to the goals and actions of the plan. So these are sorted into 6 broad goals, and each of those contains a number of supporting actions. And we really want to emphasize here that eliminating traffic fatalities and severe injuries requires a sustained and coordinated effort. And so, yeah, we're prioritizing, certain actions across these broad goals. So the first one is creating safer speeds. So this is a key element of any Vision Zero effort. Higher speeds result both in an increased risk of crashes and an increased likelihood that a crash will result in severe injury or death. And over the past 5 years, speeding drivers caused over 4,000 crashes, leading to hundreds of injuries and 29 deaths in Sonoma County. And it's important to note that we're not just talking about speeding here. We're also talking about high-speed road race, regardless of whether the driver is traveling above the limit, are a risk factor. And so, it's also looking at setting appropriate speed limits on the county's road network. The second big goal is eliminating impaired driving. Impaired driving was a factor in nearly a quarter of fatal and severe injury crashes in the county between 2016 and 2020. So curbing impaired driving means, creating transportation alternatives for people who are consuming alcohol or other substances, and preventing those with a pattern of impaired driving from getting behind the wheel, and also just addressing the root causes of alcohol and drug abuse in Sonoma County. The next high-level goal is creating a culture of safety. This is a really broad goal, but it distills down to basically instilling a sense of shared responsibility for each other's safety. It requires bringing in a broad group of stakeholders. And many of the actions in this goal focus on youth and young drivers to help develop the next generation of responsible road users. And the goal targets dangerous driving behavior contributing to all 4 of the top crash factors, which are, again, impaired driving, unsafe turns, unsafe speed, and right-of-way violations. The next big section is build safe streets for all. This goal is identified as the most important step by 67% of the survey respondents. We just wrapped up a survey of Sonoma County residents that got close to 2,500 respondents, and this was the highest priority across the survey respondents. So streets should be designed to encourage safe behavior and to reduce conflicts between users. So there are dozens of engineering countermeasures that have been proven to reduce the quantity and the severity of crashes. They range from simple things like adding reflective material to prevent drivers from running into fixed objects to more complex facilities like raised crosswalks and traffic circles. I should say, with respect to the last goal, obviously, communities across Sonoma County are already doing a lot of this, but this plan is really about, coordinating and prioritizing certain improvements that are targeted at the top crash factors. So the next big goal is about making vehicles safer. So a lot of this is about fairly simple retrofits, such as adding side guards to the side of large trucks that can reduce the risk of serious injury for pedestrians and cyclists during side collisions. It's also about local government staying ahead of developments around autonomous vehicles to make sure that, as those become more common on the roads, that they are designed and programmed to really prioritize the safety of all road users. And the last goal we have is improving data for effective decision making. So Sonoma County has already taken a huge step toward improving data with the Vision Zero data dashboard. And as part of this plan, we're just looking for ways to further improve that data and to get it into the hands of decision makers in formats that they can easily use and understand. So what's next? So the plan ends with a sort of discussion of, what will accountability look like? What will evaluation and tracking look like? And implementing these actions, again, will require a lot of collaboration between a broad list of key implementers. And, as part of this effort, we're really trying to, connect with all those people and make sure that we are coordinating the resources and the processes that they will need to make this happen. As far as tracking, we're hoping to really lean on the existing Vision Zero website and data dashboard to evaluate our efforts and track progress toward the Vision Zero goals. And finally, for individuals, we're going to include a Vision Zero pledge where Sonoma County residents can commit to particular safe driving behaviors that would really get at some of the root causes of these crashes. And finally, for local jurisdictions, we're going to be including a sample resolution that, to help bring this before city councils so they can commit to this work. And then finally, we have some appendices to the plan. I won't get too much into these, but yeah, it's just some more background and context on transportation and again, the sample resolution. So this is the project timeline. So, we've completed survey and the data analysis. Focus groups and stakeholder interviews are happening right now. The Department of Health Services has a contractor who's working on those and collecting some really good additional input from key stakeholders and implementers. And as Tanya said, we're preparing for a virtual public workshop, which is again happening on January 25th at 6 p.m. And I'll share a link in the chat. And then, yeah, based on what we hear from stakeholders and the workshop and the focus groups, we're going to be revising and finalizing the action plan at the end of February. So yeah, we really, really welcome your feedback. And you can send any comments to me, qkelly@tooldesign.com. Ideally by next Wednesday, but whenever you can get them is great. So yeah, again, thanks for your time. And I will open it up for questions and comments.
Thank you, Quinn. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Beverly.
Yes, I want to thank you for this document. I think it's a lot of work and I really, really appreciate it. I myself am both a car driver, a bike rider, and a walker. I have more miles on my bike than I will ever have on my car. And because of COVID, I have more miles on my tennis shoes than I do of either the two before that. That said, I also live in Petaluma, so you know that we have the worst roads in the county. And as a bike rider, I have been on every county road that was on that map at every one of those intersections. So I know these problems intimately. And I do have, and I read the document. So I have several observations that I think are really important. And the first and foremost, I think that there should be more street lighting. There's so little street lighting that it's really dangerous when it gets like at dusk, and certainly the early morning because of, we don't have daylight savings anymore. So street lighting, critical. More and better bike lanes and wider, particularly on county roads. We don't even have a bike lane on most of the county roads. And what we do have is a chewed up shoulder, which forces us into the highway or the road. And let's face it, there's an allergy to Lycra out there. And so we're even more at risk because we don't have a safe place to ride. Next, we need better and more complete sidewalks. There are places in Petaluma where I can't believe it, we still have dirt. So if we had sidewalks that connected, that would be great. I would like more stop signs at difficult intersections or those lighted walkways so that pedestrians, I live just off of a very busy street. I have a crosswalk that's a zebra stripe, but that traffic is going way too fast to even want to acknowledge me. Next, I would like to make walk and roll a monthly event rather than once a year. I think the more we get kids on their bikes going to school, the better. And then it'll become a habit. Doing it once a year, it's a novelty. Doing it once a month, maybe it could start a habit. Next, I would like more pedestrian-only downtown centers. If we can keep cars out of the downtown where we have lots of walkers, everyone will be safer. We have lots of people on cell phones. We have lots of people trying to wagon train a light so that they don't have to sit there. Let's keep cars out of the downtown centers where we are on our feet. And lastly, I would like speed calming where county roads enter onto municipal roads. They're drastically different speeds. And if we don't have traffic calming devices, we have people coming into our towns at 40 and 50 miles an hour. So again, thank you so much for your work. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Beverly. Those are all great comments, and I really appreciate it.
Let's see, I believe we had Tom Conlon up next with a comment.
Thank you. I too appreciate this report. This is a great reframing of our whole approach. The public health approach is really valuable. I have not had a chance to review the report in much detail yet, but I did see some comments flying around in email from Eris Weaver, and I wanted to be sure some of those ideas got reflected here today. There's been some concern about the dashboard maybe being more difficult to use than the native Switters database that's maintained by the state. And so I was suggesting that maybe we could see a side-by-side demo of the two to understand if there are gaps in the local dashboard that could be fixed, could be improved. So that's the first recommendation. Secondly, we should be brainstorming alternative strategies to reduce the risks of impaired driving. I think the report starts a list, but we could go deeper probably. Third, I'm not sure if this is in the report, but I've noticed just anecdotally reviewing the different local road safety plans that they are not on the same schedule as far as which guidelines they're recognizing and referencing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it might be helpful in the Vision Zero action plan to have a cross-reference matrix to help policymakers realize, oh, our jurisdiction's plan is not up to speed with the most current best practice, and help them identify a pathway to making those improvements or that speeding things up. The other thing that I heard talked about is the there's some concern that the reporting by the county sheriff and perhaps other jurisdiction police to the SWITRS database is not always consistent. And so there may be crashes that are not being reported. I've noticed this in Sonoma Valley. My mom witnessed a horrendous bicycle crash about 10 years ago. Never was a report of it in the paper, and never did it get. It was, you know, it was a woman who was not was perceived to be homeless, I believe, and easy for those things to get swept under the rug. So I was hoping maybe we could have the sheriff come in and explain the process and make sure we understand, make sure there's some back and forth between the Vision Zero people and the sheriff's department. And then my last suggestion, and I see this is in your notes, that the Vision Zero pledge. I've been thinking about, what about starting a Vision Zero pool where members of a committee, I was thinking the Vision Zero Action Committee, but maybe this one, we could do a pool to see who's going to be in the next collision. And then we could send, contribute $20 or something, and then that money could go to that person when they get hit or get into a collision. It would just get us all thinking a little bit more about how moving around in this county is more dangerous than in other counties on a road mile basis. And we need to make policy changes to address that. I have some additional specific things, but I've been going on a long time, so I'll let others speak.
Great, thank you, Tom. And yeah, I wanted to just say, yeah, we do have some elements in the plan, and we'll definitely take your comments into consideration. We do have some elements in the plan about sort of standardizing those, guidelines and best practices around, roadway typologies, and making sure that, yeah, we want to definitely support the local jurisdictions in making sure that those LRSPs reflect, state of the practice in terms of, bike and pedestrian facilities in particular. And I also want to flag that, yeah, we're currently in the process of, doing some additional engagement with local law enforcement, to make sure we're all sort of on the same page. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, a ton of crashes do go unreported, and part of that is, people don't want to be involved with law enforcement. There's a whole array of reasons behind that, but it does mean that we're working with somewhat limited data. So thanks.
I believe we had Pete Gang was next.
Thank you. I have not prepared these remarks. These are just impromptu. It's meaningful to me that one of the goals of Vision Zero is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One of the goals of Vision Zero is zero traffic fatalities. And zero means zero. To me, that has several implications. One is, I would suggest a revision. Instead of saying safer speeds, I would suggest safe speeds, if we are serious about getting to zero traffic fatalities. Related to that, it is abundantly clear to me that we need to challenge our thrall to the automobile, to the private vehicle. And as part of that, we need to reduce posted traffic speeds. 15 miles an hour on residential streets, 20, 25 on arterials and collectors, maybe more on the inter city roadways, but we just have to slow down traffic. That has a whole range of benefits. And finally, I'll just say that in Petaluma's Bike Ped Plan, Santa Rosa's, SCTA, Caltrans, they're all talking about the need to create a complete and integrated bike pedestrian network. So we've been in theory, we've been committed to this goal for years and years. Now is the time that we have to actually put it in place. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Pete. And then Joshua, am I saying that right?
Yeah, Joshua Somay, thank you. I'm coming in from the Sebastopol Climate Action Committee, and this stuff is new to me. I do have a couple of questions that I hope can be fairly quick, not going to get too exhaustive about it. In Sebastopol, for instance, being at a highway crossroads town, it happens that Caltrans has a lot of jurisdiction over what are essentially our main streets. And for instance, there was a restriping, including bike lanes and this and that happened in recent years that had sort of a minimum of public input and doesn't fit that well to the town. So first question is, I'm wondering, presuming we get this regional report and plan together, what leverage does that have with an agency like Caltrans? Let me hit my second question so I can stop talking. I'm sure there's a great list of actions. I look forward to reviewing that. I'm wondering, from all your research and analysis, in terms of what local cities can do you have a couple of examples of sort of the low-hanging fruit of things that local cities could do that would have a significant impact that wouldn't require, vast amounts of buy-in and funding? So thanks, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess to speak to your first question, yeah, the Caltrans thing is a huge issue. And I know that a lot of jurisdictions, I would like to, well, not even just in California, across this whole country have issues with state DOTs. And I think there's a little bit of cause for hope, because a lot of those agencies are starting to come around on some of these, emerging practices, around multimodal streets. As far as, this plan, I think it would be, we definitely want to get them at the table, and, and we'd love to get their sort of buy-in to this plan. And I think that's a good, we should definitely prioritize it as part of this outreach. So that's a good thought. As far as low-hanging fruit for local jurisdictions, I would say the two things that come to my mind is there's pretty small, like, signal changes. For example, adding leading pedestrian intervals, or adding dedicated left turn signals, or, just dedicated phases for, bicycle or pedestrian movements that can have because most of the crashes happen at intersections. And so, these sort of things can have a huge impact on reducing crashes, particularly for bikes and peds, which are the more vulnerable modes and do represent a higher proportion of the fatal and severe injury crashes. Another big thing that's been touched on a lot in this meeting already is just setting appropriate speed limits, which, is definitely something that has been a prickly issue for a long time. But as someone called out in the chat, there is this new legislation, AB 43, coming down the line, which should allow local jurisdictions a little more flexibility around setting appropriate limits. So.
Thank you. And I believe Carrie has a comment.
Hi, I really appreciate this presentation, and I especially appreciated all the equity related data within it. I learned a lot. I had a couple questions and comments. The first is, I'm curious, within that space of accountability, how prioritization for the high equity impact areas is being integrated into the accountability. I noted some actions prioritizing that, but in terms of accountability and follow through and reporting on that, I'd love to understand that a little bit more. On the community engagement strategies, I love the areas of creating a culture of safety, and on action 3.3 in particular, I would love to see a recommendation to support funding to support local champions to move this message into the community, just recognizing that messengers matter, and we often ask local trusted leaders in the community to volunteer to do more work on our behalf in the range of community engagement. So building a funding stream to support community champions to bring this into the community could be a strategy to consider there. In terms of logistics, anywhere that there are bike lanes going in, making a call, especially in the urban areas, for protected lanes, class 4 bike lanes. Very much agree with the recommendation for more lighting, more crosswalks. Also in the lens of kind of a resolution that cities can take on, I'm curious what teeth can be put into that in terms of banning urban planning practices that support fast roads, for example, banning rounded corners on sidewalks, and little touches like that that can naturally slow the flow of cars. And then love the kind of what Tom mentioned around building more public awareness around this. So how might this be integrated into city communications and be a very public goal that is set with public updates, and building the media narrative around this to build more awareness. And then lastly, curious about collaboration with efforts around tree planting, like relief, that are shown to slow traffic as well. And that's a big thing moving around in our community right now that could be an opportunity for collaboration.
Thank you, Carrie. And I really hope that maybe you can submit those in written form as well, because I don't think I got every single one of those comments. But yeah, a lot of great things to think about there. Yeah, I think, in terms of the accountability piece, as it relates to equity, part of the accountability is, about meeting these specific sort of progress metrics for each action, that's included in the plan. And like you mentioned, some of those already do include like an equity element, for example, investing infrastructure improvements on these high energy corridors that are also within the equity priority communities. And, I think as far as, giving that teeth, especially at the resolution level, I think it's definitely possible. We're currently working on the text of that like sample resolution, and actually Sophia is working on that. And so, it would be great to include something in that does relate to, for example, like the standard, right-of-way design features. So, curb radii, all that kind of thing, that lane widths, all those kind of things that sort of naturally slow traffic without implementing any special, additional traffic calming infrastructure. So I think those are all really great suggestions. And I also, I loved your suggestion also about, compensating, CBOs and local leaders for their work in getting this message out. I will definitely incorporate that into the action. I hope I didn't miss too much in that response.
Thank you, Quinn. And Steve Bertelbaugh with a comment.
Yes, thank you for this report. I want to call our attention to two things that are happening at the state level that are important, I think. One is that legislation has passed to make it easier to reduce speed limits. It's going to be a while before that gets built into the Caltrans process, but I think we need to put pressure on them to move that quickly. The other is that this year there is additional funding for active transportation programs. So now is the time to get these programs funded, and we should be pressing the legislature to make sure that this augmentation of funding does happen. Last year it was there until September and then disappeared. So it's been postponed for a year, but hopefully we'll be successful this year. We need to keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
And I believe Christopher Peck with a comment as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Quinn, for the presentation. I love it. It was great. I guess I have a comment and maybe question. My context is as someone who bikes my 8-year-old to school every day and bikes him home. It's a 1 mile. It's a 6-minute task. And most days it's relatively ire-inducing, aggravating, and fairly risky. From a residential road, Gumview Road, that's theoretically 25 miles per hour, to Star Road, which is a feeder road that is theoretically 35 miles per hour. Both of those roads, the idea of that someone will drive that speed limit almost seems preposterous. And if we lowered the speed limit, even on Gumview, which is a residential road, to 15, it's almost like it's hard to even imagine how that could happen, because nobody is like, almost, I would say 5% of people are obeying the speed limit now. And so that all of that leads to a certain level of cynicism, I'll admit, about the trying to get people to drive slower, or, et cetera. It's like, to me, it's really a hardscape problem. Like, Gumview, you probably don't know, but it's just a straightaway. It just runs literally east-west. And people just hit it and they just go. And so it seems like the issue is more about, Carrie mentioned a lot of great ideas on how, basically the structure of the road changes or whatnot. So I guess that's my comment, is like heavy emphasis on engineering solutions and less on trying to change the hearts and minds of the drivers that we're encountering. And that turns me to a question, like, is that cynicism unfounded, or do we really have data that programs to influence people's approach to driving is actually effective? Or do you have a sense of like the solutions that are offered? Like, is there, like, do we know from research what actually is the most effective in helping reduce deaths?
I will say, I don't have as much familiarity with the research around the more sort of education, encouragement, outreach side of the spectrum. I know with respect to, a lot of the engineering measures that Carrie was talking about, we know exactly how much those things reduce speeds and how much they reduce, different types of crashes. There's very robust data on that. And so, I think, as we were sort of talking about, just incorporating those things into, the roadway design standards is really important. And I also think it's about, not just lowering the speed limits, but designing the roadways to match those speed limits, and also maybe having, dynamic feedback signs so people can see, oh, I'm going 10 miles faster than I should be, or, whatever it takes. But I think it's not really, at this point, it's not really an either or. I mean, it's kind of like we sort of have to throw everything at it that we've got. So I think there's a lot of space for improvement, both on the more infrastructure side of the spectrum, as well as on the, the hearts and the minds side of things. So
Thank you.
2030 is a very ambitious target, but it's, the advisory committee is pretty committed to that. So we'll have to, I liked the suggestion of, not safer speeds, but safe speeds now. I mean, that is really the kind of thinking that we need. I mean, this is, this plan represents a huge commitment and a huge sort of change in practice by, a lot of agencies and policymakers. So.
All right, thank you, Quinn, and thanks everyone for the comments. And Christopher, I live off Star Road, so I do see some of the same things that you do. So I believe next up we have Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy Update from our own BC CAPS from the RCPA. If you'd like to present, BC.
Excellent, thank you, Ross. And let me share my screen. Great. And everybody, can you see that slide? Should be a single slide there.
Yes.
Okay, great. So good morning, everyone. It's great to be here today. I wanted to give a brief update. Oh, actually, before we go on, I see Christopher's hand is still raised. Christopher, did you actually have another comment? I will keep going. Okay. So I wanted to give a brief update on our work here on the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy and implementation of the document that was adopted by our RCPA board in the past this past March. And over the course of the last 9 months, Tanya and I and staff here have been working on a number of different issues. And we have come up with this list of 6 priority projects that we are hoping to move forward over the course of the next 12 months to further continue moving along on implementation of the strategy. Before I begin to go through these, I wanted to highlight 2 items that are not on this list, but they are also current work priorities for us, and I think they lay they're intertwined within here. One of them is we are this year in 2022, we are embarking on then updating our countywide greenhouse gas inventory using data from calendar year 2020. So that will be a major endeavor for us this year, which will look at greenhouse gas emissions from the county, from each of the jurisdictions as well as county-wide, and we'll have the plan to have that report out in the middle of this year. We are also continuing to provide support to the jurisdictions on the proposal on ordinance work that's being done by a number of jurisdictions to ban the construction of new gas stations. So those are 2, the gas station work is something that kicked off last year. That is continuing to move forward. It's not on this current list because we are looking at, this is really some priorities, new priorities that we're embarking on for this year. So don't want to take too much time to go through in details, but wanted to at least alert you kind of that and get some initial feedback on these 6 areas. And the general theme on all of these, in most cases, is the fact that RCPA's role is really to collect information and provide information back to the jurisdictions for each of the cities and the town of Windsor and the county of Sonoma to then adopt their own ordinances. And so a lot of the work that we're doing and plan to do is really around collection of information, synthesizing information, and providing that information back to kind of staff and elected officials at each of the cities and at the county itself. So first off, items number 1 and 2 on this list both have to do with decarbonization of building energy. And really the first one, number 1, is focused in on energy reach codes, energy reach code related ordinances pertaining to the new construction of buildings. And there are several jurisdictions within the county that already have reach codes that have been adopted by their councils. Those reach codes are on a 3-year renewal cycle and will actually need to be renewed this year in alignment with the new building energy code that's been released and will go into effect on January 1st of next year. And so this number 1 is really working on, it's a 2-part process. One is providing support to those jurisdictions who are looking to reauthorize their energy reach codes, potentially go further. And then the second part of that is to provide the information to the other jurisdictions who may be considering such a move, so that we can provide them with sample ordinance language and kind of help them understand the pathway that's needed, that's necessary for moving forward and adopting reach codes such as that. I will drop this in the chat after I finish speaking, but I wanted to point out on this one, there's actually a number of resources that are coming up from the that are available through the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, including an upcoming workshop series that will be taking place over the course of the next few months, which walk jurisdictions through understanding electric reach codes and understanding then how to implement those. So that's number 1. It's really focused on new construction. Item number 2 here would be is working also on decarbonization of building energy, but it's really looking at the existing buildings. And I've been looking at a newly published strategy that was developed by the city of Berkeley that is designed, it's really looking at how to decarbonize all of their existing buildings throughout the city. And that document, I think, has an incredible amount of potential for us to really pull out the parts of that document that what could apply to Sonoma County and really then start to develop more of a longer range roadmap of all the steps that local jurisdictions could take to zero in on existing buildings. A lot of work in that arena is already being done through the work of, say, the Energy and Sustainability Division, through RCPA, through Sonoma Clean Power, through the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. And so this item number 2 would really be looking to bring all of that work together into a coordinated approach and a coordinated strategy document that could be shared and that we could work on together. Moving on to, I'll go ahead and run through all 6 of these really quick, and then I'll go ahead and take questions because I'm sure there may be some questions and comments. Number 3 and 4 both have to do with decarbonization of our transportation system. This is our main greenhouse gas emissions sector in the county, as many of you are probably aware. Number 3 here is looking at continuing work on supporting the further installation of electric vehicle charging stations. And again, looking at the development of reach codes that could be adopted by local jurisdictions to further encourage the installation of EV charging stations. Number 4 is a joint project of which we would be working very closely with additional other staff here that are on staff at the Transportation Authority, our kind of sibling agency here in-house. And it would be looking at the overlap of strategies between our climate mobilization strategy and the newly adopted comprehensive transportation plan. Just listening to this past presentation here on the Vision Zero program, again, there's a lot of these, all of these efforts are intertwined, and I think that there's a lot that has to go into the Vision Zero that is in parallel with the comprehensive transportation plan. And we would be looking to basically be providing support to the SCTA staff and looking at how can we move forward the items, the strategies that are identified in the comprehensive transportation plan, specifically those that have to do with reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and then working with the local jurisdictions to identify how those could be moved forward. Number 5, we've heard a lot of support from a number of the local jurisdictions, the cities and towns, town of Windsor, on work on tree protection ordinances or urban forest conservation plans. And this is looking at a lot of the work, again, trying to synthesize and bring together and coordinate the work that's being done on tree planting programs, on protection of both protection of existing forests, protecting of existing trees, as well as planting additional trees, and looking at areas for how that could, for opportunities for sequestering carbon. There's a lot of work there that can be done at the county level and really working with ag and open space and other kind of looking at the landscape level and our forest lands throughout the county. But also there is an incredible opportunity that we've identified for working with each of the towns and the cities for looking at how to integrate kind of tree protection, tree planting within the some more of the urban areas. Our focus here would be on the carbon sequestration potential, but the benefits of tree planting are far and wide. Urban heat island of impacts and a number of other related impacts that we'd be looking to try to move forward with that work. And finally on this list, number 6, the city of Santa Rosa and several other jurisdictions are currently or in preparation to update their general plans, either in total or specific sections. Climate change is often included, sometimes included as a separate chapter, and oftentimes included as part of the safety element. Our role here and our goal here on this task on number 6 would be to work with each of the jurisdictions that are progressing on their general plan updates, to review the documents and look at areas and provide suggestions on the areas where climate change, greenhouse gas emission reduction, and our other topics of kind of interest to RCPA and that are highlighted in our climate mobilization strategy, and look for how those can be better and more deeply integrated into the work that's being done on the general plan updates. There is some state guidance on integration of climate change and climate adaptation into general plan and the safety elements, and we'd be looking to collect that information and provide guidance where it's possible. Each of the cities is going to be kind of doing their own doing their own work, and our role there is really to again to kind of provide input and provide some guidance and suggestions where possible. That in a nutshell is what we are looking to take on over the course of the next 12 months. And this list will be going to, or this list or a slightly modified version will be going to our RCPA board for discussion at our February meeting, which is on Monday, February 14th. And I wanted to get, we recently presented this to the technical advisor or the planning advisory committee of SCTA, and I've gotten some input there. And then also wanted to have a chance to present this to the CAAC today and get any input that you may have. So let me stop sharing my screen. I can bring this back up if we need it as reference. But with that, those were the comments that I had, and I will pass it over back to Ross to lead us through the discussion.
Thank you, BC. Got a few hands raised, and we will begin with Steve Bertelbaugh.
Yes, thank you for this thorough report. I am curious whether we have established relationships with the building trades and with the automotive dealers to accelerate the acceptance of the decarbonization side of things. I think the closer we can be with them, the more likely this will become uncontroversial.
I think just briefly, those are two areas where I personally have not made a personal connection, but I've certainly made a note here. The majority of the work that I've envisioned so far is kind of in that the role of us here at RCPA. It's in the direct relation with working with the planning staff of the jurisdictions. But I think that those are great suggestions on kind of really how to get the message and get movement beyond just government planning staff. So thanks.
Thank you. And next up we have Ty Benoit.
Yeah, thank you, BC. Appreciate all the work. Couple of questions. This term called EV ready reach code, I'm not as familiar with that. And as you know, Healdsburg is updating its reach code. We're hopefully going to follow Petaluma's plan because we think that's a better plan to go through the health and safety code and do a natural gas ban. But if we could also have some clarification about how to incorporate that EV ready into it, that's one thing. And then my next question is also about cataloging these efforts. Healdsburg is not going to review its entire general plan. It will review the housing element piece because that's required by law. It should also develop, we believe, a climate action plan like some of the jurisdictions have already developed. So we'd like to know where those things are going to be housed, the catalog. And I know we've talked about this in the past, trying to get a spreadsheet or something with links. But I think one of the things we could do as this group coalesces is at certain times allow a little time for discussion of what's going on in each jurisdiction. So we have some idea of, I've got the connections to Petaluma, but I'm not as knowledgeable about all the jurisdictions. So those are my questions and comments.
Sure. On the first item on the REACH codes, I think I just want to point out that the pathway for adopting electric vehicle REACH codes is really a local jurisdiction decision, and it's really completely separate from the other work on the energy REACH codes having to do with the building code. I think Tanya is more knowledgeable and is, I think, better connected on the work around the EV REACH codes, and that phrase there, EV ready REACH code, that's kind of a generic phrase that I inserted in the document. But I think that there are several different aspects to it, but it should be, even though they both use the term REACH code, want to make sure that it's clear that they are kind of different sets of work, different bodies of work. And that the electric vehicle work is kind of separate from the work on the building, on the that needs to go to the building, having to do with the building code. And then on keeping track of the information, we've discussed before, that is a little bit of a tricky puzzle to try to keep up-to-date information. One of the things that I'm attempting to do is, at least with all the information that I'm collecting, is I'm looking to be able to make that available in a, whether it just be something like a Google Drive file or some sort of a reference library that can be easily searched both by members of this committee as well as any other members of the public or building city staff that might be interested. So that doesn't really speak to keeping up to date on the very kind of what's happening at the moment, but at least for archival material, I do kind of have a plan, and I'm starting to build a library that I'm hoping to be able to share. I think there's more there that maybe we could discuss, but in the end, I tried to hit your kind of key points. So.
Yeah, BC, if I could just maybe jump in real quick here. I'm certainly not an expert on the EV ready REACH codes myself, but just to say that I have seen examples from other jurisdictions where they have addressed both the building energy and the EV REACH codes in the same set of ordinances and updates. And so certainly would want to talk with you more, Ty, about how we might be able to support Healdsburg and our other jurisdictions as we look at those EV ready REACH codes and having those be integrated as well. So definitely want to support you in that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the issue here, we've had a hard time pushing for more direct climate action. We've done some things, but there are a lot of electric vehicles in Healdsburg. And so we need to figure out a way to broaden that and, think about putting them in affordable housing projects and all of those things. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ty. Next up, we have Kevin Conway.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, BC, for that report. I just wanted to address number 6, where you mentioned that there are several cities that are going through their general plan updates, which is a very important process. Those last 10 years. And Santa Rosa is a charter city. I believe they do have a little more leeway with regard to jurisdictions and codes, maybe than other cities do. But what I would like to see reflected is the urgency of the crisis we're in. I've always complained about the lack of efficiency in how governments work, and that we have to address climate at the speed of government. I'm wondering if the RCPA would be able to submit some kind of proposals or thoughts to the General Plan Committee that if a certain regulation suggestion, a rule or regulation suggestion is climate related, that somehow be fast tracked, that we start thinking outside the box of how our cities accomplish important acts, especially climate related acts. And I just feel that the General Plan Committee should start thinking along those lines because it's not going to happen again for another 10 years. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up, we have CPA.
Thank you. And thank you again, BC, for all your work. I want to try to make some quick comments on several of the points. One about REACH codes. this gets to be a very confusing topic, but I wanted to point out to everybody that Petaluma's all-electric reach code was not done in conjunction with the state energy code. It went through the state health and safety code. And therefore, it does not have to be updated in accordance with the triannual energy code cycle. Once the ordinance is passed, it's in place. And significantly, unlike Santa Rosa's and other all-electric reach codes, Petaluma's applies to essentially all types and occupancies of building. So it's a much more far-reaching code, and it's much more efficient in terms of staff time. Let's see, under drive less, I would suggest that now is the time to focus on, I guess the term complete streets might serve as an overarching handle on it. And well, I don't want to slam the comprehensive transportation plan, but to me, in my view, it is not the most valuable document in helping us get to our 2030 goal of carbon neutrality. Finally, I just wanted to say Petaluma is in the thick of its general plan update process. At last night's Climate Action Commission hearing, the general plan consultants got an earful from the commissioners, essentially urging the consultants to really take to heart the urgency of the climate crisis, that we aspire to arrive at carbon neutrality 8 years from now. So we need bold, visionary plans, not small, incremental changes. Thank you.
Just before we move on, I wanted to comment, Pete, thank you for pointing out the difference in the way the Petaluma reach codes were adopted, because I think that is a critical distinction that we'll be exploring further as this work moves on, but it is a very critical distinction for us to keep in mind, that it takes a different pathway. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Carrie Fugit.
Hi again. Thank you so much, BC. I really appreciate this presentation. It's very clear and digestible, and very excited about the archival library idea, and want to voice support for whatever budget is available to invest in a solid knowledge management system, because there's a huge potential around offering a platform for self-facilitated learning. I do think we have an enormous bottleneck right now in terms of resource sharing. And if there's a tool that can support more free-flowing sharing of wisdom and knowledge and ordinances, that would be worth the investment, in my opinion. And then a couple comments on the decarbonization number 2. It would be awesome to add, under the focus of existing buildings, a priority to start with affordable units, housing units and rental units, just to ensure that kind of inequities are recognized directly in the policy proposal. And same with sequestration number 5, with the urban emphasis on equity priority neighborhoods, which are well known, just to have that be a little bit more explicit. I know it's probably baked in there somewhere, but putting it front and center is important as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. And then we have David Leland.
Yeah, I wanted to support the focus on building retrofits. I think that's very important. And just a couple of points there that I've run across. The backup power is an element of that, it seems like, and backup battery power, and specifically. I mean, we don't want to encourage more diesel generators or whatever people use for backup power. And also the importance of subsidies and rebates. Moving from traditional water heaters to, say, a heat pump water heater, an electric heat pump, or even a tankless, and same thing with with space heating can often require an upgrade to the electric panel, which is a costly thing. So and the technologies themselves often are more expensive. So there's a big hurdle there for people who people who are in a position where they must replace their water heater. They often have to do that under duress because the heater failed, and they're going to pick the easiest thing. And so somehow grappling with that and not missing the opportunities that come along to make those upgrades as green as possible. So, and then the other thing is on number 5 on the urban forest conservation. In looking at that priority in the plan, the other piece of that there's been some engagement on is timberlands, or forest lands is how it's phrased. And the RCPA sounds like it's been participating in the forest lands working group that Goldridge, I don't think though covers, first of all, doesn't cover the whole county. And then secondly, that leaves out a lot of Sonoma County real estate, if you will. Grasslands maybe being one of the bigger ones, and it seems like there might be opportunities there. My recent understanding, and I haven't gotten deep into this, but the grasslands can be huge opportunities for carbon sequestration with what's below the surface, with the root systems associated with the grasslands. So I don't want us to miss an opportunity there. That's it. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And we have Tom Conlon.
Thanks again. Yeah, I wanted to add to that a little bit. I too am concerned about the urban tree prioritization. I think that's a little naive considering how much effort's going on throughout the county to move in the direction of biomass energy and to do vegetation management. That seems to be where the bulk of the carbon is currently sequestered. And I've never been happy with the prioritization of looking at the ag soils sequestration over the other existing carbon base. Right? The way our strategy is set up is it says we have 2 priorities. One is preserve existing carbon stocks, and then the second is to expand carbon stocks. And I believe that we really don't have a clear data picture in front of us right now as to where those stocks are. And I have an anecdotal sense that we've lost a tremendous amount of carbon in the last 5 years, and that we are continuing even through policy, particularly the vegetation management policy, fuel breaks, and all this money coming in from the PG&E wildfire settlement and the new money from the federal government that's being channeled to potentially into some of the vegetation management activities, that we are actually actively mining carbon out of the stocks that we have right now. And so without a good data platform to make policy decisions, we're not aware of what we're doing. So I think that's something that RCPA really needs to step to the fore and make sure happens, so that we can inform the other agencies that are appropriately concerned about fire risk management and sustainable forestry and those other benefits. But I think it's uniquely the responsibility of RCPA to be doing the carbon stock based analysis and then planning. So maybe that's something that could even be added as an augmentation to the inventory this year. I know you guys have a lot on your plate, but something to consider. The timing is going to be critical for getting that information out to the public as soon as possible. So thanks for consideration of that comment.
I'll just add, I don't want to, on the spot, I don't want to overpromise anything, but I will. We are looking at the new guidance from ICLEI as part of the greenhouse gas inventory on forest lands and carbon stocks having to do with kind of carbon sequestration and forest lands. And so that is something we're looking at, and I think are in kind of some active conversations with, say, Ag and Open Space District and with the county's climate team within the CAO's office around how to quantify some of those things and keep track of those longer term. So certainly on our mind. So thank you.
Then we have Christopher Peck with his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, BC, again, always for everything you do. And this is a kind of a partial question, partial comment. Like I realize I'm ignorant about how the electrification strategies are, if they're being prioritized at all. Like we're all aware that, you know, transportation is 50% of our carbon impact in the county. And so like clearly that's like the biggest thing we should be working on. Then, you know, home, business, et cetera. I'm curious if, like, you know, the idea of like helping incentivize homeowners to shift their water heaters, that seems to me like that must be 0.5% of our carbon emissions or something like that. And the cost to do that is enormous. And I say this from personal experience, having replaced the gas water heater and put in a heat pump water heater, and I had to move it to the garage, and that required all this other stuff. And I happened to have a plug I could rewire. I mean, it was like a lot of things that made it possible, including the DIY side. Otherwise, I mean, what it would have cost to have a contractor to do something like that was like easily $5,000 to $10,000, especially if the service panel had to be upgraded. That seems like an incredibly inefficient use of dollars per carbon problem versus something like in the home, something like upgrading heating, cooling systems, which, as David mentioned, you know, the water heaters happen under duress. Heating systems happen usually with consideration. You know, like you're planning out, we need air conditioning, we need a better heating system, we have time, there's options. And that home heating cooling element is a much larger fraction of residential, both cost and impact. So I'm just making that elaborate comment to add on, if we are doing sort of targeted, structured home existing stock remodel electrification leaning or weight or whatever, that we really focus it based on the carbon impact as well as the cost factor, if that makes sense. I think you got it. So
very good. Thank you, Christopher.
Okay, proceeding along, we it's like it is time for the reporting out.
Hey, Ross.
Yes.
Ross, sorry, before we move on, could we just ask if there's any comment from members of the public? That's okay. So, and I just to let folks know, we do have two members of the public here with us today from the Sebastopol Climate Action Committee, Joshua and Kenna Lee. And I think they are interested in the work of this committee, and potentially one or both might be interested in joining the committee in the future. So just wanted to give Joshua and Kenna an opportunity. If you do have any comments or questions, you know, please feel free to jump in. And if not, we can certainly move on. So, all right, Ross, I'll turn it back to you. Thanks.
All right, excellent. So we will proceed with reporting out by jurisdiction. I would, of course, ask for some brevity, just because we are getting there time-wise. So Tanya told me last time she went backwards, Z to A. So this time I'm going to go from the top down. So do we have anyone from to report from Cloverdale?
Hi, Ross. This is Jane Elias reporting from Cloverdale, and was not able to attend October's meeting. So a few things that have been happening lately in the city. First of all, on what I have to report out is on municipal efforts. At this point in time, the city has been working with PG&E's Sustainable Solutions Turnkey program over the last several months. They coordinated that effort with the County Energy and Sustainability Division with some preliminary assessments. And now they've moved forward with choosing an energy services company, and investment grade audits are currently happening. They are looking at a number of improvements for city buildings and city operations related to climate. A few of those items are replacing and upgrading indoor lighting. The city has been upgrading streetlights already and continue to do so to those up to LEDs, and then looking at a number of HVAC improvements in city operations, as well as solar photovoltaic at the wastewater treatment plant, and then solar and battery storage as well for the wastewater treatment plant, but then also using the RES BCT PG&E program so that any overproduction can be utilized to offset usage in other city addresses. A lot of equipment and motor upgrades related to wastewater treatment and some of the other facilities. And then finally looking at probably installing at least a couple more EV charging stations in the downtown area for people to go ahead and utilize for public. And failed to mention water upgrades. Of course, there's a lot of water upgrades happening right now. First off, the replacement of individual meters to be able to go ahead and look at those on a 5-minute basis or 15-minute interval type thing, so that residents will be able to track their water use much more efficiently and accurately from the pleasure of their own home, instead of having to go down and walk and find their meter and look at that and track it. That's all I have to report out. Thanks.
It looks like Ross lost his audio connection. Can you hear us, Ross? So maybe we can, I'll step in here for a moment while he's getting reconnected. So how about Katati? I know we've got Judith here, I think.
Yes. Thanks. Nothing to report at this time.
All right. Let's see. Petaluma. No, sorry, Healdsburg. I'm thinking of my alphabet.
Hi, I'll make this pretty brief because I already mentioned the fact that we're reviewing our REACH codes. At the last city council meeting, there were also a number of other issues that came up as the city was reviewing the goals that it had set for itself related to climate action. And they realized that they were supposed to host a series of town halls. And most of the public that spoke said, no point in holding town halls if you don't involve all members of the community and there's not an outcome. So we're really pushing for the development of a climate action plan and the resuscitation of a climate committee. So yeah, oh, and then one last thing, they're developing a job description for the city manager, the assistant city manager, not the one that's already employed, but an assistant city manager. And we're really pushing that person would have interdepartmental responsibility for overseeing climate action in Healdsburg. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Ross, welcome back. Sorry your audio's being
sure what's going
problematic.
on. My apologies. So going down the list, I believe we are looking at Petaluma.
I can go first and then Pete can follow. We had our kickoff last night for Cool Cities, and it was absolutely incredible. We had, I think, 237 people for our Zoom meeting. The level of enthusiasm was off the charts. Then the willingness and eagerness to get going on climate was just inspirational. So I highly, highly recommend that everybody just get on board, because the people want to get on board and they want something to do and they want to be there. So that's that. The other thing is that we are working on our general plan and continue to work on that. We've just finished the first review of that in front of the council. And we do have one of our community partners that is working on our tree ordinance. And I'll let Pete pick up the rest.
Okay, thank you, Beverly. Yeah, the cool Petaluma launch was off the charts, inspirational, exciting, invigorating, encouraging, very hopeful. At the meeting, there was a brief comment from, I believe he's a council member in LA, Andy Schrader, and he said, "We are with you all the way. Whatever Petaluma does, LA will follow you." It was kind of nice. I wanted to especially remind Santa Rosa that this Cool City Challenge is open only to cities of 40,000 population or greater, and that have committed to a 2030 carbon neutrality goal. So I would suggest that Santa Rosa track what Petaluma is doing and get their foot in the door for next year's $1 million grants. Yeah, and I also wanted to just tag on about the general plan update that based on the work that our Climate Action Commission forwarded to City Council, our general plan update will include a climate action and adaptation plan. And based on what I heard at last night's Climate Action Commission meeting, I am hopeful that it will chart a credible path toward carbon neutrality by 2030. I guess that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Rohnert Park.
Okay, I guess I'll go. We since our last meeting, Rohnert Park has officially transitioned to the Sonoma Clean Powers Evergreen program. We have continued also to update the climate element in our general plan. So going kind of on our previous conversation here, hopefully all of the cities can kind of track and work together, possibly in that Google Doc, to make sure that we're all on the same page and pushing that forward, and the language is concise. Rohnert Park has also updated the social justice and environmental justice element in our general plan. BC came to the council on November 23rd and gave his energy efficiency presentation. So thank you for that. And very exciting news that some of you may have heard. Rohnert Park has received a $6 million federal grant specifically for our creekways, our waterways. So that was announced at the end of last year, and work on that will start this year. So that's really exciting. I can stop there if there's more to add. Just kind of the basic, 101 pedestrian overcrossing is continuing to be brought back, and bike share implementation and other things.
Thank you, Julie. I have something to add too. Yeah, with the pedestrian pedestrian bicycle overcross, I just hope we don't take down any more redwood trees, because those things are really valuable for us as far as carbon. And I don't think we can plant enough if we would take out 5 of them for that overcross. So keep that in mind. I just wanted to add real quick that I did send in to the public comments for our consent calendar. I can't talk now, sorry. So this is to oppose the net energy metering 3.0. So that's coming down you're probably going to hear a lot about it, but CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission Board, has asked for some decisions from some of our utilities companies, and we're not thrilled about it. So we're opposing some of the decisions and some of the recommendations. So I put that on in the public opinions going to Rohnert Park. And so I just want to give a shout out there to what's going on with our net energy metering 3.0 opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have, we have Santa Rosa. Would Kevin or Steve, who would like to report in?
I don't have a report at this time.
I'll add that Santa Rosa finally had a meeting of its subcommittee on climate last night after going for a number of months without enough staff support to really do anything. They do plan to talk about the no gas ordinance at their next meeting. So that's some progress. We're hopeful that now that they're staffed up, or at least have a part-time staff and a new city manager, we'll begin to see some movement. And I think following Petaluma's footsteps is a good suggestion.
All right, thank you, Steve. Moving on to Sebastopol.
Sure, I can chime in with just sort of a brief and by no means comprehensive report. So our Climate Action Committee has been meeting for about a year now. We got a year behind because of the pandemic. Frankly, it took the first 6 months to sort of deal with logistical issues in the Brown Act and realize that Sebastopol has done almost everything in terms of low-hanging fruit they can think of. We have just gotten into sort of the official public launch of the city's climate action framework public process and development plan. So that's rolling along, and we expect to have a document which is being fielded by a fellowship supported point person who's being hosted at RCPA, and the end date on that is about August or so. So there's going to be a lot of activity on that in recent months to come. The city is getting pretty close to approving a ban on new gas stations. We did a compost giveaway a couple of months ago where we got 40 yards, sort of brought in through a county zero waste and got it disappeared by residents in under 3 hours. So we're gearing up to do that repeatedly in the coming year, particularly as state SB 1383 requires cities to purchase a degree of compost or mulch for, per resident. So we're expecting to do compost giveaways on a regular basis. We have kind of a community-based public recycled art project that is going to be launching soon. We have reach code discussion related to the update of the housing section of the general plan, and a few other kind of theoretical irons in the fire as well amongst our working group. So enough for now. Thanks. Nice to see you all.
Thank you. And Pete, Pete Gang, did you have your hand up? Did I see?
No, I had a thumb up.
Oh, okay. I'll take it. Moving on to Sonoma, I believe David Leland.
I would like to defer to Tom first, and then I have some observations and thoughts second. Tom,
Great.
are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Sure. Not really prepared, but I will run down a few things. Like Santa Rosa, we've had a bit of a house of cards in Sonoma with new city managers and new city council people. So we've had a rollover at the top and so a delay, frankly, in the implementation of our climate emergency ordinance resolution, I should say. But the Community Service and Environment Commission, which has been working on these issues for about at least 5 years, remains solid and concerned because we're not making adequate progress. So the other night, this past week, we had a joint meeting of all the city environment commissioners and all the city council. And there is some indication that cohesion is sort of starting to come back together. We basically had a 6 or 8 month period of chaos and no progress. In that time, our sustainability coordinator, Travis Wagner, has continued to make good progress on AB 1383 implementation. That's the waste law. It's organic waste management law. And so we are keeping abreast of the minimum legal mandates, but we're certainly not making great progress toward our goals. And in fact, most recently, the bike lane striping along Broadway, the gateway into the Sonoma Plaza, which has been a somewhat contentious issue in the city, there was an attempt to redo that good design at the last minute. It failed, but it failed under, it was just a mess. So there's been a lot of concern expressed that we're simply not making progress fast enough in Sonoma. And the idea that we may need to start, the citizens may need to start coming up with contingency plans ourselves because government's not moving fast enough. And I don't know where that looks like, but we have to be ready to defend this planet and our families from climate collapse.
So let me add at least a couple of positive things that have happened in Sonoma. One is Travis has continued to work on a climate action plan and took comments that Tom and I provided and incorporated them and made a much stronger, more readable plan. So there's a positive thing there. And the city council, as I understand it, Tom, and you can confirm this, has adopted an environmentally sustainable purchasing policy, which I thought that's an important step. I mean, that's where the money gets spent. And along those lines, I was looking into yesterday, looking into public safety use of electric vehicles. And there seems to have been a pretty major shift in the last year or two. And there are many police departments, not just in California, but all over the country, who have been testing out EVs, and some of them who have tested and found that they not only save a lot of money, which was kind of their initial impulse, but they perform better. And so that there's kind of been a big shift there. And I mention that because all of us have police departments or sheriff's departments or other public safety entities who are buying vehicles, and I'm sure that many of the jurisdictions, Santa Rosa and Petaluma, maybe in particular, are buying new vehicles every year, and there's enough experience out there to support an effort to move those departments in that direction, at least for a pilot. And now is the budget season. I mean, everybody is proposing their budgets that to be adopted for the coming fiscal year. So just wanted to throw that out there. And then the other thing is, I just wanted to acknowledge the progress report for 2021 that was in the agenda package, and the enormous amount of organizations that are out there and that the RCPA has been coordinating with, and what a significant effort it must be just to do the coordination, because of all of the different entities who have some interest or some role that interfaces with the county and the RCPA. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving along, to the town of Windsor, I believe we have Christopher Peck.
Yeah, you thought Windsor was really had their act together and the council problems were behind us. However, that is not true. I reached out to our relevant council members and I only heard back from one of them, which is rare. And that person merely said, "Great, we should talk." So I have no data to report.
Okay, continuing on, County of Sonoma, Gorhams District.
That's Tom, and I think he already went.
Yeah,
yeah.
He already weighed in, and then Supervisor Rabbit's district. Looks like I don't see Jake. Is anyone jumping in there? And lastly, Supervisor Hopkins district in Cary.
I'll keep it very brief because I know we've gone over. We're just working to continue to advocate for the recommendations from the Petaluma Equitable Climate Action Coalition at a looking at how can we as a county do more equitable community engagement around climate change and bring a sense of ownership and pride around how we implement the solutions being discussed.
Thank you. And Tom, you said, did I see in the chat you wanted to weigh in briefly?
I'll be very brief. The city of Sonoma is also supporting the planning process at the Sonoma Developmental Center. There's been a good deal of effort there. That is an issue of countywide concern. It's possibly the largest redevelopment project in the county's history. There's been some recent discussion of the importance of embodied energy throughout the architecture community. We need to pay attention to the energy and carbon that's stored in existing buildings. There are a lot of old, very durable buildings standing out there that could be adaptively reused. And so we're looking forward to the county environmental impact reporting process, looking closely at that, as well as vehicle miles traveled to and from that relatively remote location. So those are just things to be paying attention to at the county level.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have any public comment on this update? So it's like we do not. So Tanya, would you like to give an update on RCPA activities?
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, I'll just refer to the activities report. And David, thank you so much for reading the report and for your feedback on that. And we just ask if any members of the committee have any questions or comments on the activities report. And if not, we can move on to the next item. Thank you all.
And the next item is just call for announcements from members. Tom?
I did just have to Tanya's point, I did just have a question about the grant process that was underway for the sequestration goal. I think the Farm Bureau had made an application to the state.
Yeah, and I don't think that, I'm pretty sure we did not receive that grant, or the Farm Bureau did not receive that grant. I don't think it's one of the top.
I'll jump in really quick. I just looked that up and no, the Sonoma County Farm Bureau application was not recommended for funding. I'll drop a link right now into the chat.
And then the second thing was Dana Turi had submitted a grant, I believe, for countywide bicycle and pedestrian updates. So just curious for an update on that.
We're expecting a response back in March, so we have not heard back yet on that.
Thank you. And then, yeah, member announcements. Does anyone have an announcement they'd like to add? Okay, in that case, I believe we are ready to adjourn. So thank you for your patience and with me, and thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.